3, 4.
Welcome, my name is Brett Robley and this is C# Programming on .NET ISDS 309 at Cal State University Fullerton. Today I'm going to take you through a lesson on how to create a comma-separated value file. And so first I want to show you the objective. So here I am going to open up empdata.txt and you can see what the data looks like. There's a employee number, first name, and last name. Now let's go to Visual Studio 2017 and let's create a new project and we'll call it WriteFile. We'll make it a console application. This program is taken right out of the Farrell textbook, Microsoft Visual Studio 2017 C# programming. Let's delete the lines that we don't need and we'll leave the first one. I'm not going to talk about code we already know or concepts we already know. I'll just put those lines in. Now here's a new one using system.io. This is a namespace that is going to give us access to the file stream and stream writer classes, and we'll use these objects to interact with the operating system. Now first I'm going to make my application class, which we'll call it write sequential file. And I call it an application class because this is the one where we put our main method, as we've been doing all semester. And that is, the main method is where the code starts in C#. And now let's create a data structure called employee. So we'll be writing employee records into a file. Now I'm going to make use of the auto-implemented properties. So let's put in a first name along with its getters and setters. After I type this comment, let's create a last name as a property. And you'll note that the properties have uppercase first letters. And we'll just take advantage of those automatic getters and setters. Okay, and now I'm going to put in an integer employee number. And that gives us our basic structure. Obviously, we can expand this to include social security number, CWID, salary, all kinds of things. Now, let's get to our main method and let's initialize some working variables. The program is based on the sample programs in the Farrell textbook, and so I'm using Farrell's code for the most part. There's a few changes. She creates end, which is a sentinel, which is what the user of the application is going to input to signal when they're done inputting. We will then create a delimiter, which is the comma character, and that's so that we can separate our fields when we write them to the file with a comma delimiter, and this is known as a comma separated value file, or CSV. And then we need to create a file name so that we can ask the operating system to open a file and give it a particular name on a particular path. I'll use the @ syntax so that we don't have to use escape sequences to get the slash characters out. That just is a lot more readable to have a single slash rather than double slashes throughout your path. Okay, now let's create an employee object and instantiate it. We'll call it emp, and we'll call the default constructor employee. And now this is new. This is where we're going to ask the operating system to create a file for us and give it the name that we specify. So I'm creating a file stream object, I'm instantiating it, I'm passing it the file name parameter, I'm passing it a file mode, which is going to be create to create the file access to write to the file. And so that's all requested through the operating system. It's all kind of computer science magic. There's a lot of details that we don't cover in a business programming class. And you don't really need to know them as a programmer. You just have to trust that the operating system's going to open or create a file for us and allow us to write to it. Now, we're going to wrap this file stream object in a stream writer object, and that's going to simplify our interaction with the operating system file. It's going to allow us to just use WriteLine to write to the file and not worry about computer science operating system interaction details. So we wrap out file by passing it as the parameter. It's an object reference. We pass that to the file stream writer, and that's what we call wrapping. Okay, now we're going to ask the user to start inputting some of the data, and so we'll use the console class write method and say enter an employee number, and I'm using the concatenation here, end, which is the sentinel we're going to use to signal that we're done inputting. And now, because employee number, the property, was defined in the employee class as an integer, and our input from the keyboard is going to be coming in as characters or a string, we need to convert to int32 what we read from the keyboard, and the read line is where we get it from the keyboard. Now we create a while loop and we test to see that the employee number that was just entered does not equal 999. Okay, and then if it doesn't, we go into the main block, and we're going to ask for the first name and give the user the opportunity to input it and store it directly into the first property. We'll do the same thing for last and store it directly into the last property in the employee object. Now, in a professional program, you would want to do input validation before storing it in your object, but we want to keep this short and simple, so we're going to trust that the user will give us clean input. Now, this is where we have collected the three fields and we want to write the record to the file. So we will send a message to the writer object called WriteLine, and we'll list each field that we want output to the file, and we'll use the concatenation plus sign and the delimiter, which is the comma, and then we'll complete the whole record or terminate the whole record with a carriage return line feed. We get that from the WriteLine method. Okay, now we need to just let the user decide what they're going to do, and so we copy the code from above and we insert it at the end of the loop so that the user has the opportunity to either add more employee numbers or type 999 to quit the file or quit the program. Then finally, once the user does type 999, we want to send a message to the writer object to close and clean up after itself, releasing operating system resources. The same thing with out file. Now let's see if this works or if we have any errors that we need to fix. And it's building the project. Okay, and here's the message, and let's type 999 and quit. See if that works. Okay, that works great. So let's run the program again. And this time I'll put in some real data. We got our first employee is Mickey Mouse. Our second employee, let's make it Donald Duck. Our third employee, we'll say, is Minnie Mouse. Our fourth employee is Daisy Duck. Now here I'm going to put in 4 again, and this is to demonstrate that there's no logic in our program to check for duplicate employee numbers. That's something we can improve on, and here I'll put in 56 to show that there's no enforcement of sequential employee numbers. So those are 2 ways that we can improve the program. Now let's go look for the file, and let's look at the timestamp here. We see that it's the same, so we know the file was just written. We'll open the file, and sure enough, in the contents we see the employee number, first name, and last name that we just created. Now this is a bona fide comma separated value file, and to prove that, let me open up Excel, and we'll go ahead and import that into Excel. The wizard comes up, it recognizes it as a delimited text file. We're not delimited with tabs, so I'll uncheck that and I will say we're a common delimited file. That all looks good. Okay, and here you have just imported the file that you created from C#. Now I'll change a couple of fields here, and then I'll save as, and I will select the empdata.txt file, so it should challenge us to overwrite it. Okay, I'm going to overwrite it. I'll close Excel, and now let's go back and open the file, and you'll see that the fields have been updated. And that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it.